Yeah, I want to echo the thanks to Scott. We asked him Sunday night at about 10 o'clock to come and talk in the symposium. So he put that together and went to this meeting and tweeted throughout the whole thing in a heck of a hurry. So I'm going to wrap up here. Everybody's been sharing personal experiences about how they're using Twitter and social media and stuff. And I'm going to burn a bridge a little bit. I'm going to talk about how I think natural history sciences, biodiversity sciences, are going to be undergoing or are undergoing a revolution right now because of social media. So I'm Canadian, from Ontario, and 100 years ago, when entomologists in Canada were publishing or sharing their research, what they would do is they would literally, all 63 of them in Canada, would write into the Entomological Society of Ontario's journal, and they would share what they found that year. And so in this case, we've got a scathophagiid, which somebody shared in. It was identified by another. They collaborated on it, and it was a new year record in North America of this European fly. And so this is what they would do. There was pages and pages of lists where they would just say, found this insect, this date, this time, this person. And they would have it, and everybody that collected insects in Canada, the entire country, would be able to write in and do this. Things have changed a little bit in the last, 100 years, where now we don't have one single list of everything getting updated every year. Now we have a whole bunch of places where scientists and entomologists are publishing their research, and for the majority of that time, it's been behind paywalls and inaccessible to a lot of people. But lately, in the last 10 years or so, we've been hitting this new thing, which everybody's been pushing, which is this democratization of taxonomy. The idea that by using all sorts of different techniques, and you can see it's a fairly popular term now, this is in there, all of them, whether it's DNA barcoding and molecular identification, whether it is universal register of names like ZooBank, whether it's digital photography, whether it's open access publishing, everybody's jumping on this bandwagon that we are democratizing taxonomy and thus making it available to everybody, because we as scientists are making all this great work available to them. But I want to ask whether this is actually what a democracy is. Is people standing at the top shouting out, use our stuff, is that really what a democracy is? And we'll get back to that in a sec. So what we're doing is, we know where some of these places to look for biodiversity data, whether it's specimens, whether it's records and whatnot. Some of these places are places that we build, and we ask the audience or the public to come and talk to and give us the information. Some of these places are places where the grassroots community has gotten together and they haven't found a place to talk about it, so they build their own. And some of these places are third-party apps which are trying to facilitate this conversation between scientists and the public, like iNaturalist and Project NOAA. All of these are great, and I love them all, and we all know to look at them. I imagine most entomologists, most taxonomists in this room visit one or most of those sites on a monthly or weekly basis. iNaturalist just announced that they had their 1 millionth observation added to the site last week. So these things are starting to pick up. But the thing is, almost every time that I'm contacted on Twitter or by email to help with an identification, I send them a link back to one of these sites with more information because I want to try, and almost every single one of those people doesn't know that they exist. And so what they're doing instead is they're publishing their stuff where they can, which is all of these new publishing networks and publishing venues that we don't necessarily pay attention to. And I give you advice because it is very hard to. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But this is where people publish now. It's not where we want them to publish. It's where they want to publish. So to give you an idea of just how many people are publishing on the internet right now, here's all the major networks. And I mean, there's more than this. Facebook, 1 billion active users. YouTube, 1 billion active watchers and uploaders. All those numbers are in the millions ranges. And if we're talking about how much they're actually posting and contributing, Facebook has got 9 billion photos uploaded every month. YouTube has got 4.3 million hours of content uploaded every month. Twitter has 15 billion posts. Some of these other things, Instagram, 1.8 billion photos uploaded every month. How many of those are insects or natural history or behavior that we're missing because we're not knowing where to look? More than 50% of North Americans own a smartphone right now. How many of them are taking them out into the field and using these resources that we are trying to make and trying to put out there and calling our democracy of taxonomy, and using them in the field to help them find and discover their passion and their curiosity? Here's a bunch of examples. So everybody's pretty much heard of the Neuropter and the lacewing that was discovered on Flickr, and they worked with the local photographer in Malaysia and figured out, went back, found some more specimens. There was another one which didn't get as much press here in North America, but which is a big hit in Australia, which is another one of these little peacock spiders. So this photo up here, this little peacock spider on the leaf, that was posted to Flickr. North American spider taxonomists came along and said, I don't know what it is, but it's probably a new species. They went and got in contact. The photographer, Stuart Hill, actually spent 100 hours in the field trying to find another specimen so that he could collect it and give it to Jürgen Otto, who everybody has seen his photos and videos of the dancing peacock spiders. So Stuart Hill put 100 hours into finding this spider again after somebody told him, I think it may be new. Could you find us another one? So a taxonomist is connecting with these people and helping get this data in there. So new species are kind of common. In this case, we've got the species of beetle was known to taxonomists as being new, but they didn't know what the larvae were. They had it in collections. They knew it was something that they wanted to get around to describing at some point. And then Jim McLaren ended up finding it himself, rediscovering that it's a new species, and he posted the larvae, which he also found, onto Bug Guide. These larvae then just inspired a conversation. Two people were working on the same beetle. They discovered it in the comments of the comment section of Bug Guide. They ended up collaborating, the three of them, and publishing it just this last week. So his photos, I think, were published in 2007. So it's another, good idea of here's taxonomic knowledge that we know is new, but it took 7 years for it to actually get published, whereas it was now identifiable online in Bug Guide well before the taxonomic community actually got behind it and could do it. It's not just new species, though. This is an example of somebody synonymizing a species in the comments section of Bug Guide. So you see this beetle here. Somebody was saying, this looks a lot like this other beetle. Do you think they may be the same thing? Somebody went off and talked to George Ball, renowned beetle specialist, off the site, got a comment from him. He's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're the same thing. They went and posted it here. And we'll talk about it a little more in attribution later, but essentially they synonymize these beetles in the comments section of Bug Guide. So unfortunately, as we often say, you never read the comments, you're going to have to start reading the comments. How about Instagram? So this is a species of tree cricket that was photographed in southern Ontario, and the collector, the photographer Jody Allaire, he rightly realized that it's a new county record for this species. This is less than an hour from my collection, this place, and we didn't know it was from that county yet. We have an orthoptera specialist in the lab, and we hadn't recognized that we hadn't collected it from this city or from this county yet. And this is literally less than an hour from my in-laws live in this county, and we don't have this thing. But the only thing that we knew that he had it and that he had shared this with us and that he had published it is he sent it to the Entomological Society of Canada's Twitter feed. He said, hey, look what I found. And that's how he let us know. We've got Twitter records going on. So Miles, a lot of people have been maybe familiar with Miles. He's a grad student at University of Manitoba in Winnipeg. He got excited and shared this, that he may have found a Merope tuber. A student had brought it in. This is a really weird insect that is very rarely collected. It turns out that he had a bit of a mis-ID, and it actually wasn't Merope tuber. But the idea still holds, and he later went on and did find a different species of wasp. It was the first family record for the province as well. I think we may all be familiar about this, the daisy chaining video of ants pulling a millipede. Again, viral video goes viral, an experience that most entomologists hadn't seen. There was a couple of people that had seen it and were just waiting for more data to publish on it and let people know, but social media beat them to the game and got the buzz out beforehand. And of course, you can start using it for monitoring rain shifts concurrent with climate change. This is a paper that came out recently of looking and using Flickr and Picasa and various sites to help track Nephyla spiders. So they argue that these giant spiders, they're very big, they catch people's attention, they're likely going to show up on social media in various forms, and they can use those records to track as the species moves north as climate changes. And so last night I went on Instagram and just searched for Nephyla, hashtag Nephyla, and there was a bunch of pictures. Some of them were misidentified. In the paper they said, yeah, we're probably going to get a misidentification with this other Arania species, but we can help differentiate them. But here's one here. So this is the problem. Finding biodiversity data online is not easy. I can tell you right now, it is not easy. So it has to be manual search or it has to be serendipity. So you have to go onto Instagram and you have to search for hashtag Nephyla, or you have to search for your taxa of interest. And it's time intensive and laborious. Or you get them to tell you about it as well, which is kind of nice. So what I think we need is an automated service scanning these different various networks for biodiversity data. And just 2 weeks ago, Vijay Barv, who's I think a student in Kansas or Kentucky, sorry about that, he just published a paper sort of on the same idea, saying we can search Flickr for these records. He was exempling it with monarch butterflies and snowy owls, and we can use this for primary data. So this is something that I've been postulating. I don't have the technical skills to do this, so I hope somebody does. But what we need to do is we need to take a database of nomenclature, something from like EOL, the Encyclopedia of Life. We need to combine it with a database of common names, much like the Entomological Society's list of common names. And we need to figure out a way to ping them off of social media running continuously. So as social media is going through, we all know it's such an ephemeral publication media where if you lose it, you miss something, you're probably not going to find it again. If that takes 2 months to go away before you search for that term, Twitter especially is not very good at Twitter searching within itself. So it's very hard to find. So we need to not only be scanning constantly, but we need to start archiving this stuff so that when we're ready to use it or when somebody is ready to look for it, we can all have one database and we can use it as we need to. So now, of course, this brings in all sorts of other problems. So we need to change the way, I think, we need to change the way that journals and the academic community acknowledge these resources and these new publication venues. Twitter does have a citation format as put out by the MLA. So if you were to cite a tweet in a paper, this would be the way to do it. It looks ridiculous. I don't disagree with you, but it's possible, and I think it should be done. If somebody puts in a new record or whatever, there's no reason that you can't do this. And we're starting to see it happen. So this is my lab mate's paper. It's in the proof stage. It should be coming out in the next couple of weeks. And he included the Instagram photo that I just shared earlier of the tree cricket. And he cited it, and luckily, because we're in JSO, the same journal that included all the records from every collector in Canada 100 years ago, we're already putting in links to Instagram in the actual reference section, not just as web address in the middle of the paper. So this is starting to filter in. And again, if we look back at the synonymy that was found in the comments of Bug Guide, it was actually recognized by Yves Bisquet when he did his catalog of the caraboids and such. And you can see here that he actually cited it as well. This doesn't show up in the reference section, but he does at least bring it into the conversation in this way. So then the other important question is the ethics of doing this. So this summer, some psychologists started dinking around with people's Facebook timelines without necessarily getting their approval or anything like that, and it caused a massive uproar. People were very, very upset that scientists were experimenting on them on their Facebook feed. So for a discipline like natural history and biodiversity and taxonomy, which is already sort of misunderstood, we certainly don't want to be offending the same people that are giving us this opportunity to look at their data. So we need to know, is scraping the data ethical, or is it even allowed? Is it allowed by the terms of service of these different apps and companies? Can we just archive this stuff? And is it because these people aren't giving us a specimen or sending in a photo to Bug Guide, and thus in giving us the privilege and the right or the permission to use their data, it's a different thing when we're taking it from a third party. So I think we need to think about that and decide whether that's something we should or can be doing. The other question is, if we're archiving it, what if somebody deletes their account? So they don't want their information up online anymore. Does that record stop being, accessible to us? Do we have to, not use that record anymore? And then, of course, are there issues with privacy? Do people want their backyard photos going up on scientific publications and such? Yes, Twitter and Instagram and such are public products, and theoretically they want them shared. But there is this issue of, the high-power scientists coming in and taking stuff out of their backyard without their knowledge. And I mean, a lot of this stuff can get around just by interacting with the people and asking them. I mean, the idea of this is it's a communication network. You should be able to communicate with these people without too much trouble. And so before we get this databasing system set up and we figured out all these ethics, right now how you can get this data is just starting to get involved. Be accessible online. And this will lead to people sending you data and specimens. I have people sending me ID requests almost daily, either on Twitter, by email, wherever. I have people sending me stuff saying, do you know what this is? Can you help me out? And that's because I put a little bit of time in to make myself available to the community in that way. But this has bigger benefits. So sometimes you'll have somebody come in like this, say, come across this big zombie ant fungus. What is it? Turns out it's new. It's a new species. And they wouldn't have found it if it wasn't for this individual coming and talking to the expert, who is David Hughes at University of Pennsylvania or Penn State. They sent it to him because he's done a good job of, selling the coolness of zombie ants and fungus parasites. They sent him this picture that they found during their research or during their own exploration, and yes, it turns out to be a new species, discovered via Twitter. Personally relevant to me, Sean McCann is an entomologist out in BC. He takes very, very nice photos. He happened to tweet this out. This is the group that I study personally for my PhD, the genus Micropisa. I saw this going through my feed. I'm like, oh, that would be really useful. I tweeted him back. I'm like, if you get a chance, I know you're defending in 3 days, but if you get a chance, could you go out and collect me a specimen when you're done defending? He's like, yeah, sure. He went out that night and picked up a specimen, threw it in alcohol, and shipped it to me in the mail, and I had it on my desk 2 or 3 days later, I think the same day that he was defending. And so I was getting these research specimens. Turns out that it's a species that had gone unnoticed or had been recorded from North America 30 years ago, but had then since been forgotten that it was here. It's a European species. Anyway, so now I've got data for a very important specimen in my freezer in the lab waiting to be sequenced, all because of social media. So I just want to conclude and say that social media will, or rather is, revolutionizing the way that biodiversity data is published, and that if we truly want to democratize taxonomy, we must go to and listen to the people who we're trying to make that data available to. So I'd like to thank a bunch of people on Twitter and such who have helped me with this, as well as my lab mates and my advisor for putting up with me on the internet, as well as the entire internet, and especially everybody in this room who either presented or came and listened, because I think that's a really important thing, and I'm very, very excited to see so many people here talking and listening about social media this week. So anyways, thank you very much. We're going to have our open discussion now. So